In the sweltering shadows of a dying Confederacy, where the air hung heavy with the sins of the fathers, Thomas Vickery pressed his boot to the parlor floor, and heard the hollow whisper of hell itself rising from below. Eyes wide with forbidden knowledge, he pried open the veil, only to face 31 silent souls, untouched by time, staring back like ghosts from a biblical plague. What divine curse had preserved them, and at what unholy cost? The sun bled red across the Mississippi horizon that August day in 1862, painting the Vickery plantation in hues of judgment and fire. The air was thick, suffocating, a miasma of scorched earth, distant cannon smoke, and the metallic tang of impending doom. Confederate soldiers, ragged phantoms in gray, stumbled through the county like the damned fleeing Armageddon. Fields that once whispered with the rustle of cotton now lay fallow, haunted by the ghosts of enslaved hands long fled or conscripted. Thomas Vickery, a man of 43 years etched with the lines of unyielding pride, stood as a sentinel amid the chaos. His plantation house, a grand antebellum sentinel of white columns and shadowed verandas, loomed over 200 acres of bottomland, 3 miles east of Greenville. Built by his father in 1831, it was a monument to prosperity forged on the backs of the oppressed, a structure that now seemed to pulse with secrets, as if the very walls breathed accusations of inherited sin. Thomas had walked these halls since boyhood, his boots echoing like the metronome of a life unchallenged. Every creak of the oak floors was a familiar hymn, every groan a verse in the family's legacy. But on that fateful afternoon, as Martha, his wife, twisted her apron in the doorway, her face a mask of quiet desperation, eyes darting toward the horizon where Union blue threatened to crest like a tidal wave of retribution, something fractured. Thomas paused mid-stride, his heel lingering on a plank near the massive stone fireplace. The sound wasn't right. Not the weary protest of aged wood bending under mortal weight, but a resonant void, an emptiness that clawed at the soul. It was as if the house itself had exhaled a confession, revealing a chasm where solid ground should hold firm. He pressed down again, deliberate, his heart thudding in rhythm with the hollow echo. The floorboards, polished to a deceptive sheen by generations of servitude, betrayed no visible flaw. Yet his fingers, calloused from years of overseeing the harvest of souls and soil alike, traced a seam, too precise, too artful for nature's hand. It was the work of cunning craftsmanship, a hidden scar in the skin of his home. "Martha," he murmured, his voice low and edged with an unease that twisted like a thorn in his chest, "fetch the crowbar from the barn. Quickly now." She hesitated, her hands trembling as if grasping at the fraying threads of normalcy. "Thomas, the soldiers, we must pack. Nightfall brings them, and with them, God's own fury on this land." But he was already kneeling, the weight of his body pressing against the betrayal beneath. The war had stripped away illusions, brothers turned against brothers, empires crumbling like Babel's tower, and now, his own foundation mocked him. 20 minutes later, sweat beading on his brow like beads of penance, Thomas wrenched the first board free. Wood splintered with a crack that echoed like a gunshot in the empty parlor. 2 more followed, revealing a yawning blackness below. The lantern's flame danced as he lowered it, casting flickering shadows that writhed like tormented spirits. The smell hit him first, not the rot of decay, but the raw essence of life confined, sweat-slicked skin, labored breaths, and a primal undercurrent of existence persisting against divine order. It was human, achingly so, laced with the faint, earthy musk of straw and damp brick. As the light pierced the void, Thomas's breath caught in his throat. 31 pairs of eyes gleamed back from the gloom, unblinking, eternal. Children, all of them children, huddled in the dimness, their forms gaunt yet vital, faces pale as moonlit shrouds. Ages spanning from tender 4-year-olds to those on the cusp of adolescence. They sat in eerie stillness, arranged in a pattern that whispered of ritual. No cries escaped their lips, no frantic scrambles toward the light. They simply watched, their expressions voids of surprise, fear, or pleading hope, as if they were vessels awaiting a long-foretold awakening, souls suspended in a limbo of biblical proportion. Martha's scream shattered the trance, a raw wail that tore through the house like the cry of a prophetess beholding abomination. Thomas recoiled, his mind reeling as neighbors, the few hardy souls who hadn't fled the encroaching bluecoats, rushed in, drawn by the commotion. One by one, the children were lifted into the brutal sunlight, their thin bodies limp yet compliant, skin cool to the touch despite the oppressive heat. Doctors were summoned, authorities alerted, but Thomas's soul was already ensnared by the abyss. This house, his birthright, had harbored a secret for generations. His father, John Vickery, the architect of this empire, had woven darkness into its very bones. Who had condemned these innocents to the underworld? And by what unholy grace have they endured, untouched by time's relentless scythe? The Vickery plantation was a relic of antebellum grandeur, its fields once alive with the forced labor that built Southern fortunes. By 1862, war had gnawed at its edges, half the workforce vanished into the fog of rebellion, cotton bales rotting in barns as markets collapsed under blockade. Yet Thomas clung to it, a steward of legacy, blind to the spiritual rot festering below. The hidden chamber, now exposed, revealed layers of deception. Dr. Samuel Frost, the grizzled physician of 70, arrived on horseback, his satchel heavy with instruments of earthly healing. Exempt from the conscript's call, his hands trembled not from age alone but from the weight of mysteries he'd glimpsed in his long career, plagues that mimicked divine wrath, recoveries that smacked of miracles or curses. In the drawing room, where velvet drapes hung like funeral shrouds and the air carried the faint scent of beeswax candles, the children were arrayed. They accepted sips of water from tin cups with mechanical grace, nibbling bread as if performing a sacrament. "Impossible," Frost whispered to Thomas, his voice a rasp against the silence. "By all laws of God and nature, these lambs should have perished. Sealed in darkness, no vents apparent, no sustenance, suffocation or starvation within days. Yet they breathe, they respond, malnourished but miraculously preserved." Thomas observed them, his gut twisting with paternal dread and inherited guilt. The group was a mosaic of the South's sins, some with porcelain skin echoing European lineage, others bearing the warm hues of mixed heritage, a few with the deep ebony of enslaved ancestry. Their garments were relics, homespun shifts and breeches from a bygone era, faded and threadbare, as if plucked from the 1830s wardrobe of the damned. "Have they uttered a word?" Thomas inquired, his tone laced with desperation. Frost shook his head. "Not one. They obey commands, drink, eat, but speech eludes them. It's as though they're bound by an invisible vow, awaiting absolution from a higher power." Permission from whom? The question hung like incense in a confessional, unanswered. That night, as Martha and the remaining servants, loyal shadows who moved with the quiet resignation of the oppressed, prepared makeshift beds in the upper rooms, Thomas descended once more into the chamber. 3 lanterns cast a hellish glow, illuminating a space far vaster than first perceived, 15 feet square, ceiling low enough to force a man to bow in humility, walls of meticulously laid brick that spoke of skilled, secretive labor. The floor, packed earth-strewn with ancient straw that crunched like brittle bones underfoot, bore faint chalk lines, a grid of 31 circles, precise as a Kabbalistic diagram. Carved into one wall, etched with what must have been a child's desperate tool or a builder's deliberate hand, Shepherd's Hold, 1839. The date struck Thomas like a lash, 8 years after his father's construction of the house. John Vickery had known, perhaps commanded, this crypt's creation. Why? For what profane purpose? A narrow ventilation shaft snaked upward, concealed in the masonry, emerging unseen near the roof, air enough for survival, but not escape. A copper basin collected drips from wall condensation, a meager font of life. The air down here was cooler, almost sacral, carrying whispers of eternity. Thomas's mind raced with scriptural echoes, Jonah in the whale's belly, preserved by divine will, Lazarus called from the tomb, defying decay. Was this a perversion of such miracles, a hubris of men playing God? By dawn of the second day, rumors spread through Greenville's skeletal populace like wildfire through dry fields. The town, gutted by war, young men bled out on distant battlefields, families scattered like chaff, clung to this enigma as distraction from apocalypse. Sheriff James Polk, 64 and weathered as old leather, arrived with his tarnished badge glinting in the sun. His eyes, shadowed by exhaustion, surveyed the children in their neat rows. "They must be questioned," he declared, voice gravelly with authority eroded by chaos. "Families ache for lost kin, records demand answers." But Frost interjected, "They speak not, Sheriff. Commands they heed, but voices remain locked, as if guarded by angelic seals." Thomas, sleepless and haunted, shared his findings, gaps in his father's journals from 1839 to 1840, unexplained payments to Henry Cutler, a contractor claimed by yellow fever in 1847. "Convenient shroud," Polk muttered. Then, a pivotal moment, the dark-haired girl, 9 years perhaps, with eyes like storm clouds, fixed her gaze on Thomas. A chill slithered through him, evoking the serpent's stare in Eden. From her pocket, she produced a silver Spanish real, dated 1792, scratched with J.V. John Vickery's mark. The coin's chill defied her warmth, a talisman of paternal betrayal. "Where?" Thomas demanded, but silence reigned, thick as judgment. Martha's discovery in the attic, a ledger hidden behind a false wardrobe panel, unraveled the thread. Water-stained pages chronicled the Shepherd's Society, a cabal of planters, merchants, ministers, cloaked in piety. They rescued orphans, mixed-race outcasts, the inconvenient, 31 souls acquired from 1839 to 1841. Not rehomed, but sealed in the hold. John's final entry, "May God forgive what we have done in His name." Sealed until the appointed time. Instructions with H.C. The children, listed by name and plight, matched those above, ageless, preserved. Frost paled, beyond science, this is sorcery or divine intervention inverted. References to E.H. in Charleston, 1822, and the Shuttered Institute of Natural Philosophy hinted at forbidden knowledge, experiments in suspending life, manipulating time's sacred flow. As days blurred, Thomas obsessed over the chalk grid, Frost noting the children's subtle awakening, growth spurts, flickers of presence. One evening, the girl spoke, "Where is the shepherd?" Her voice, rusty as rusted chains, evoked lost lambs crying for their guardian. "He promised return when time was right, but the world is not better." The room froze, hearts pounding with the weight of revelation. These children, symbols of innocence entombed, embodied the South's collective guilt, sins of slavery. Abandonment, hubris against God's clock. Thomas felt the spiritual noose tighten, redemption or damnation? The war's thunder rolled closer, a harbinger of cosmic justice, as the mystery deepened into a chilling legacy of eternal vigil. What appointed time had arrived, and would it claim them all? The drawing room of the Vickery Plantation pulsed with an unnatural hush that evening, as if the house itself held its breath, anticipating revelation. Flickering oil lamps cast elongated shadows across the wallpaper, peeling like old sins exposed to light. The air was thick with the scent of stale bread and broth, mingled with the faint, acrid tang of fear sweat from the adults clustered around. Outside, the Mississippi night pressed in, alive with the distant rumble of thunder, or perhaps artillery, a reminder that the Civil War's wrath encroached like a biblical flood. Thomas Vickery burst through the door, his boots thudding on the Persian rug, heart slamming against his ribs like a prisoner demanding release. Martha's urgent call had summoned him from his vigil in the hidden chamber below, where chalk markings mocked him with their cryptic geometry. The children sat in a semicircle, their small forms arranged on velvet chairs and threadbare cushions, faces illuminated by the warm glow that danced like fireflies in purgatory. Mary Catherine, the dark-haired girl with eyes like polished slate, reflecting depths no child should know, met his gaze steadily. Her voice, when she spoke again, was a rusty hinge creaking open after years of silence. "The world is still sick. We can feel it in the air, in the ground beneath us. It's not cleansed yet." The words hung heavy, laced with a spiritual weight that evoked the prophets of old, lamenting a fallen Eden. Thomas knelt before her, the floorboards creaking under his weight, the same boards that had concealed this nightmare. "What is your name, child?" he asked, his voice a tremor, laced with paternal ache and dawning horror. "Mary Catherine," she replied, her tone measured, as if reciting from a long-forgotten catechism. "I am 7 years old. I have been 7 for a very long time." The confession rippled through the room like a chill wind, stirring the drapes and extinguishing a candle's flame. One by one, the other children stirred, their voices emerging haltingly, like souls awakening from Sheol. William, a boy of perhaps 6 with freckles like scattered constellations, murmured, "The shepherd promised a better dawn." Sarah, her curls matted and eyes wide with rediscovered wonder, added, "We drank the bitter tea, and the world faded." Their stories wove together in a tapestry of consistency, each thread pulling tighter around the adults' throats. All had been drawn to the Vickery Plantation between 1839 and 1841, lured by promises of salvation from lives frayed by poverty, orphanhood, or the South's unspoken racial sins. Mixed-race foundlings abandoned by indifferent fathers, orphans from riverboat tragedies, children of slaves whose light skin posed inconvenient questions, they were the forgotten, the expendable. "The shepherd gathered us," Mary Catherine explained, her small hands folding in her lap like a prayer. He said we were being saved from the sin sickness devouring the land. A tea, bitter as wormwood from Revelation, made us drowsy. Then down into the dark we went, like Jonah into the whale's belly, preserved by a higher will. Dr. Frost, his lined face etched deeper with disbelief, leaned forward, the scent of his medicinal herbs clashing with the room's musty aura. You simply slept? For 23 years? Not sleep, William corrected, his voice gaining strength, eyes flickering with fragments of dream memories. We were there, yet adrift, in a dream where time's river slowed to a trickle. Footsteps echoed above like distant thunder, voices murmured like ghosts in the wind, but we couldn't stir, couldn't cry out. Until the light pierced the seal, and we awoke to this, unchanged world. The description evoked a spiritual stasis, a perversion of resurrection, bodies sustained, souls suspended. Defying the decay God ordained for mortal flesh. Sheriff Polk, his notebook open on his knee, pencil scratching like accusations, interjected with a grim set to his jaw. This shepherd, his true name? The children shook their heads in unison, a eerie choreography that sent shivers down spines. Describe him, Polk pressed, his voice gravelly, eyes narrowed like a judge in the court of heaven. Old, Mary Catherine said, her gaze distant, as if peering through veils of time. White hair like fresh cotton, voice kind as a pastor's sermon. He wore fine wool suits, smelled of tobacco smoke and peppermint, sharp, comforting. Thomas's stomach churned, bile rising like guilt. That was his father, John Vickery, the peppermint candies always tucked in his vest, the pipe's aromatic haze filling the study each evening. The realization struck like Cain's blow, paternal love twisted into something monstrous, a false prophet leading lambs to slumber instead of slaughter. Sarah chimed in, her voice a fragile melody. He visited us before the sleep, reading from the Bible, verses of Noah's Ark, the faithful preserved amid floodwaters of sin. You are chosen, he said, pillars of purity for a redeemed world. Chosen for what? Thomas's question hung in the air, heavy with dread. To build anew, Mary Catherine answered. A world without the sin sickness, greed, violence, the corruption that eats men's souls like locusts in Pharaoh's fields. The children's shared glances spoke of a collective memory, a hive of innocence bound by ritual. Cleansed how? Frost probed, his scientific mind warring with the supernatural undertones. He never said, a boy named Daniel replied. But his eyes burned with certainty, like Moses beholding the burning bush. Thomas pondered the timeline, his mind a whirlwind of dates and deceptions. 1839 to 1862. 23 years his father had wagered on humanity's self-correction, betting innocent lives on a divine purge that never came. Instead, the nation bled in civil strife, brother against brother, a modern Babel or Sodom's fall. Other adults? Thomas asked, voice cracking. Besides the shepherd, yes, Daniel nodded. Men in shadows, watching. One was a doctor, checking pulses, breaths, amazed we lived. His name? Dr. Frost. The room froze, air thickening to ice. Samuel Frost blanched, his hands trembling as if palsied. Impossible, he whispered, voice a ghost. I'd remember such abomination. Not you, Mary Catherine clarified gently, her wisdom unnerving in its childlike frame. Your father, Marcus Frost. He took notes, marveled at the shepherd's work. Frost reeled, the revelation a dagger to his lineage, his own blood complicit in this defiance of natural law, echoing the forbidden fruit's temptation, knowledge that corrupts. He died in 1849, Frost murmured. Never a word. Sworn to secrecy, Mary Catherine said, eyes holding ancient knowledge. The shepherd bound them, lest the project fail, the world learn too soon. How many? Thomas demanded. 7, William affirmed. 7 pillars, like the churches in Revelation, preservers of the innocent till cleansing's end. Polk cross-referenced the ledger, its pages yellowed like aged parchment, ink faded but damning. John Vickery, Marcus Frost, Reverends Hayes and Pritchard, planter Edmund Cordell, merchant George Brennan, attorney Charles Whitfield. All dead, Thomas echoed, the word tolling like a funeral bell. Not all, Frost corrected, color returning in splotches. Whitfield's son, Stephen, lives in Vicksburg. Polk rose, determination hardening his features. I'll write at dawn, if answers linger, he's the vessel. But Mary Catherine interjected, "He knows nothing. The secret perished with them, no wives, no heirs privy." Frustration boiled in Thomas, then explain this miracle, or curse. Children ageless, sustained in a tomb without bread or breath. The shepherd knew forgotten ways, Mary Catherine replied, her tone serene yet chilling. From Ezra in Charleston, ancient lore from dusty tomes, halting time for pure hearts. The ledger's cryptic note crystallized. Dr. Frost shook his head, denial a shield against madness. Fiction. Can't be. Yet we endure, she countered simply. Alive when death claimed us, childlike when years should wrinkle us. Deny not what eyes behold, doctor, like Thomas doubting the risen Christ. Silence descended, thick as fog on the delta, each adult grappling with the spiritual abyss, men aping God's sovereignty, suspending souls in a man-made Gehenna. For 3 days, Thomas scoured the house, a possessed man tearing through attics and cellars, dust motes dancing in sunbeams like restless spirits. Cobwebs clung to his clothes, the scent of mildew and old paper clinging to his skin. In his father's study, shelves groaned under leather-bound volumes. The family Bible, a monolithic tome untouched since John's passing, caught his eye. With trembling fingers, he opened it, pages whispering secrets. A hollow carved in the Old Testament revealed 7 letters, wax seals cracked like broken covenants, dated 1837 to 1839, from E. Harper, Charleston Institute of Natural Philosophy. Gathering Polk, Frost, and Martha in the dining room, crystal chandelier tinkling like distant bells, Thomas read aloud, voice steadying into resolve. First letter, June 15, 1837. Harper's words dripped with seductive piety, proposing to shield innocence from time's corruption via compounds and chambers, preserving children like seeds for a moral spring. Horror-etched faces, Martha whispered, insanity cloaked in salvation. Second, September 1837, detailing methodology, young, unattached subjects, precise chamber specs, a tea from exotic poisons. 31 positions in a ritual grid. Monstrous, Polk growled, yet effective. Third, January 1838, assuaging doubts with twisted scripture, Noah's Ark reimagined, sin's deluge justified. Manipulation, Martha seethed, seeing faith weaponized. Fourth, March 1839, shipment instructions, painless descent into stasis, seal for decades. Fifth, June 1839, joy at progress. The letters painted a cabal's descent, hubris as holiness, experimentation as evangelism. As Thomas folded the last, the room spun with implications, divine retribution looming for those who dared halt God's clock. The children's awakening signaled judgment's hour, the war's chaos, perhaps, the cleansing twisted into irony. What redemption for the shepherd's heirs? The night deepened, thunder cracking like heavenly decree, as secrets unraveled toward an inevitable reckoning. The dining room air grew stale and oppressive as Thomas unfolded the 5th letter, the parchment crackling like dry leaves underfoot in a forgotten graveyard. Candle flames sputtered, casting jittery shadows that danced across the faces of Polk, Frost, and Martha, each etched with a mix of revulsion and reluctant fascination. Outside, the Mississippi winds howled through the plantation's oaks, branches scraping the windows like skeletal fingers begging entry. The war's distant echoes, muffled booms of cannon fire, underscored the unnatural silence within, as if the house itself mourned the revelations spilling from Ezra Harper's words. 15 subjects secured and in position, Thomas read, his voice steady but laced with bile. You are halfway to completion. The letter praised the shepherd's progress, assuaging doubts about the youngest, a 4-year-old girl whose absolute innocence, Harper claimed, would make her a treasure upon awakening. Gather the remaining 16 with care, it urged, better months of delay than an unfit soul. Thomas paused, the paper trembling in his grip. Harper's tone shifted then, confessing troubles in Charleston, scrutiny from small minds branding his work heresy. I may relocate, he wrote, but the hold endures. We perform God's labor, preserving purity amid decay. The arrogance dripped like venom, twisting divine stewardship into mortal hubris, men daring to halt the Creator's will, echoing the Tower of Babel's folly. Polk leaned forward, his badge glinting dully in the light, eyes narrowed. He was fleeing even then, covering tracks. Frost nodded, his physician's composure cracking. Experimentation veiled as salvation, a serpent's whisper in Eden's garden. The sixth letter, dated November 2, 1839, arrived like a thunderclap, brief, frantic, ink smudged as if written in haste. "The Institute is shuttered," Harper declared. "An incident, a misunderstanding. Authorities had raided, seizing records, he fled that night. Sever ties. Burn all correspondence. Complete the hold alone. Trust the pattern." The finality struck Thomas like a physical blow, his father's isolation in this madness now clear, abandoned by his mentor, yet pressing on in blind faith. "May the future vindicate us," Harper ended, a hollow prayer from a fugitive alchemist. Thomas's hands shook as he set it aside, the room spinning with the weight of inherited sin. "One more," he murmured, unfolding the seventh, not from Harper, but in John Vickery's precise script, dated January 1841. "To whomever opens this chamber," it began, a confessional etched in fading ink. "If you read this, time has turned, 20 years or more. I pray your world is redeemed." John detailed the sealing, 31 innocents entombed to escape this age's corruption. Yet doubt seeped through. "I wonder if we committed monstrosity, mistaking fear for purpose." He lacked courage to unseal them into a broken realm, leaving their fate to the finder. "If they live," Harper's science triumphed. "Decide their path. Forgive us. May God mercy our souls." Silence blanketed the room, thick as grave dirt. Polk broke it, regret in the end, he knew the wrongness. Thomas bit back bitterness, yet he left them, 23 years in limbo. Frost added softly, fear of confession, of unleashing preserved lambs into wolves' jaws. Unseen in the doorway, Mary Catherine and a cluster of children, William, Sarah, Daniel, lingered like spectral witnesses. Their presence had evolved, no longer mechanical puppets, but vibrant beings reclaiming vitality, steps sure, eyes alight with awakening fire. The shepherd trembled, Mary Catherine intoned, her voice a clarion echoing scriptural lament. Even in our dream state, his anguish pressed like a millstone. Visits over years, sense through the veil, then cessation, his death avoid. We waited, trusting his promise. Her gaze pierced Thomas, "You breached the seal prematurely. The world festers still, sickness rampant." Martha, voice sharp with maternal dread, "What sickness?" "The war," Mary Catherine replied, simple as gospel truth. "Hatred's flood, killing's harvest." The plan crumbled. The words evoked apocalyptic visions, fields soaked in brothers' blood, a nation as Sodom, divine wrath manifest in cannon smoke. 5 days later, Stephen Whitfield arrived on horseback, dust-cloaked and wary, summoned by Polk's cryptic missive. 43, prosperous attorney evading the draft through coin and cunning, he entered the drawing room, now a makeshift sanctuary for the children, and faltered. His face drained to ash, knees buckling. Thomas caught him, the man's tailored coat reeking of pipe tobacco and privilege. "Impossible," Whitfield gasped, eyes darting among the youthful faces. "They should be corpses." Stillness gripped the air. Polk pounced, "What knowledge hides you?" Whitfield collapsed into a chair, hands cradling his head like Atlas wearied. "Father's deathbed ravings, 3 years past, fevered delusions, I thought. The 31 sleeping children," he babbled. "A godly error, playing creator and failing." Pressed, he spilled, the compound from Charleston's madman, meant for 20-year stasis, auto-awakening. If not after 20, failure, preserved dead, mercifully entombed. But here they breathed, defying his father's grim assurance. "Alive," Martha insisted. "Vital." Whitfield's laugh was hollow. "Are they?" Mary Catherine advanced, grace fluid as a seraph's glide. "Your father prayed above us, begging absolution." Whitfield stared. "Mary Catherine, first acquired. You'd be 30. Eternally 7, she corrected, finality chilling as Sheol's gate. Frost probed, "You're aging, catching up." Her smile unnerved, "To our true span, then stasis anew. Forever fixed, transformed beyond human frailty." "Impossible," Whitfield croaked. "We are the impossible," she retorted. Decades-lived children, sin-shielded innocence. Frost rose, urgency firing his veins, examinations, blood, vitals. "Science must unravel this." "You'll find humanity's shell," Mary Catherine warned. "But essence altered." Over the week, Frost's study became a clinic of wonders and woes. Lamplight gleamed on instruments, stethoscopes, thermometers, as he probed each child. Surface normalcy, recovering from deprivation, vitals stable. Yet anomalies lurked, temperatures hovering at 96 to 97 degrees Fahrenheit, hearts pulsing 40 to 50 beats even in play, evoking hibernating beasts or saints in ecstatic trance. Healing defied reason, cuts vanishing in hours, burns erased overnight. Cellular clocks slowed, Frost explained to Thomas and Polk, voice awed and afraid. Yet regeneration surges, contradiction incarnate. The compound's legacy? Permanent, perhaps, Harper's elixir of forbidden fruit, granting longevity's curse. Polk's inquiries unearthed the Institute's scandal, 1,837 human trials on the destitute, deaths from experimental brews. Harper escaped, records raised. Precursor to the hold, Martha shuddered. Children as guinea pigs. Thomas pondered, unpredictable manifestations, what brews within? That night, fate answered. Rebecca, the youngest, sealed at 4, now appearing 6 amid rapid growth, awoke shrieking, a wail piercing the plantation's hush like a banshee's cry. Martha rushed, nightgown fluttering, to the children's room where moonlight slanted through shutters, casting bars of silver shadow. Rebecca sat rigid, eyes vacant voids. There below, she intoned, voice multiplex, choral, otherworldly. Waiting, unawoken. Martha's embrace met resistance, the others, the dead. Spine. Tingling dread, failed before ceiling, buried under earth. 31 above, 7 below, the pattern's truth. Thomas, Frost, and children arrived, clustered like apostles at a revelation. Dream, Frost dismissed. Mary Catherine countered, memory unlocked, compounds doors to the past. Failures, wrong doses, perished prototypes interred beneath. Monstrous, Martha gasped. Frost, trial and error on innocence. Rebecca focused on Thomas, dig. 7 failures complete the 38, dead bolstering the preserved. She fainted, pulse racing, fever spiking. Echoes, Mary Catherine explained. Stasis nonlinear thaw, shared visions, networked souls. Thomas stared at the floor, we excavated dawn, for truth's absolution. Morning brought shovels and resolve. In the chamber, dim lanterns flickering on brick walls damp with condensation, Thomas, Polk, and neighbors dug, earth yielding grudgingly, scent of loam and decay rising. 3 hours in, metal struck wood. Not bone, but a child-sized coffin, light as sin's hollow promise. Hoisted to the parlor, Frost pried it open, a small skeleton, curled in eternal repose, bones brittle as forgotten vows. The room reeked of unearthed secrets, the air heavy with spiritual reckoning, sacrifices for a false utopia, the shepherds design a pyramid of the damned. More coffins followed, 7 in total, each a testament to hubris, children discarded in pursuit of perfection, their tiny frames symbols of innocence betrayed. Thomas knelt, tears carving paths through grime, whispering prayers for forgiveness, his father's legacy a chain binding him to this abyss of eternal youth and buried horrors. As the children gathered, Mary Catherine spoke, the pattern holds, failure's bones anchored our sleep, a foundation of death for life's suspension. Frost documented, sketches frantic, alchemical blasphemy, merging mortality's extremes. Polk vowed justice, though the perpetrators moldered in graves. But the true terror lurked, these preserved souls, forever altered, harbingers of what? Immortality's gift or curse? The war raged nearer, Union forces cresting horizons like avenging angels, perhaps to claim this plantation of perdition. Thomas felt divine judgment's gaze, redemption through revelation, or damnation in discovery? The house groaned, as if the buried 7 stirred, whispering indictments to the 31 above, their ageless eyes reflecting a world's unhealed wounds. The parlor floor, once a veil of deception, now lay torn open like a confessional booth ripped asunder, revealing the chamber's underbelly. Dust motes swirled in the slanting afternoon light filtering through lace curtains, heavy with the scent of unearthed soil, rich, loamy, laced with the faint, acrid whisper of decay that clung to the air like incense in a forsaken chapel. Thomas Vickery's shovel had struck wood first, a dull thud resonating through his bones like the toll of a judgment bell. Not the brittle crack of bone, but the solid resistance of a coffin, child-sized and crudely hewn, its surface scarred by hasty nails driven in penance or haste. As they hoisted it up, The box's weight was unnaturally light, as if the contents had been hollowed by time's relentless hunger, desiccated into echoes of forgotten lives. Sheriff Polk and the neighbors, sturdy men with calloused hands and faces etched by war's hardships, worked in grim silence, their breaths ragged in the confined space. The lantern's flames flickered, casting grotesque shadows on the brick walls, where moisture beaded like tears of condemnation. Dr. Frost, perched at the opening above, directed with a voice steady but threaded with dread. They pried the lid free with a creak that echoed like the groan of a soul in purgatory. Inside, the skeleton of a child lay curled in fetal repose, bones arranged with a tenderness that mocked the horror, small ribs arched like a cage for a heart long stilled, tiny phalanges clutching a scrap of paper wrapped in oilcloth, preserved against rot as if by divine irony. Frost's hands, veined and trembling, unfolded the note. Ink faded but legible, in John Vickery's meticulous script, Samuel, age 6. First attempt. Died 3 hours after administration. Too much compound. May God forgive me. The words sliced through the room like a blade of retribution, hanging in the stagnant air, a paternal confession of sin, hubris as the original transgression, experimentation as the fruit of forbidden knowledge. Thomas felt a chill coil in his gut, evoking Cain's mark, his father's hand, once guiding him in boyhood, now revealed as the instrument of innocent slaughter. The group pressed on, excavating 6 more that day, each box a sepulchre of failure, each note a verse in a litany of damnation. Elizabeth, 5, second attempt. Died overnight. Still excessive. Michael, 8, third. Stable 2 days, then sudden expiry. Dosage errant. Patricia, 7, fourth. 4 days in stasis, deceased upon inspection. Imperfect. James, 10, fifth. Breathing ceased after week. Ratio adjustment needed. Catherine, 9, sixth. 2 weeks survival, perished in emergence. Still flawed. Robert, 6, seventh. Violent reaction during administration. Formula overhaul required. 7 lambs led to the altar of progress, their tiny frames interred beneath the earth that would later cradle the successful 31. The chamber, once a crypt of preservation, now unveiled as a foundation built on bones, a spiritual pyramid where the dead propped up the living, symbols of sacrificial atonement gone awry. Thomas collapsed onto the parlor floor amid the arrayed coffins, the wood's chill seeping through his clothes like guilt's embrace. The notes scattered around him, yellowed pages bearing the weight of murder, not swift killings, but calculated trials, children as vessels for alchemical ambition. He slew them, Thomas whispered, voice raw as scraped flesh. Tweaked poisons till perfection, then entombed 31 more. Frost knelt beside him, the old doctor's eyes shadowed by moral eclipse. He chased a miracle, Thomas, defying death's decree, playing redeemer. Sacrifices deemed necessary, like Abraham's halted blade, but without divine intervention. Polk's face hardened to granite, badge tarnished by the revelation. Murders manifold, conspiracy profane. Yet culprits dust, no gallows, no justice earthly. From the doorway, Martha's voice pierced, pale face framed by shadows, the children, living testaments. Victims, Thomas countered fiercely, heart aching with paternal echo. Innocence, not culprits. The world will devour them, she warned. Curiosity's probe, souls dissected. Mary Catherine materialized beside her, ever watchful, her gray eyes pools of ancient wisdom in a child's frame, a prophetess among the damned. The shepherd interred his errors, she intoned, voice serene yet laced with judgment's edge. Truth emerges, inexorable as resurrection. We are no divine gifts, no ark-born pure. Successes forged in screams, bodies that bent to the venom while siblings shattered. Not your burden, Thomas affirmed, though doubt gnawed. Our essence, she replied. Products of slaughter, bearers of that shadow eternally, decades, perhaps eons. Polk sharpened, centuries? Her smile chilled, evoking the serpent's knowing grin. Frost's notes, healing swift as Lazarus' rise, metabolism slowed like Methuselah's span, temperatures cooled as if in Sheol's grip. The elixir didn't merely pause us, it rewove our threads, defying time's scythe. Post-catch-up, aging may halt, immortality's veil, not gift but curse. Frost exhaled, eternal youth? Not undying, she clarified. Woundable, slayable. But old age's decay? Banished. The shepherd sought perpetual innocence, he birthed undying witnesses to sin. Containment fractured by late August, rumors slithering through Greenville like vines overtaking a grave. Union troops, blue-clad harbingers advancing through Mississippi's scarred fields, caught whispers amid campfires glow, tales of unearthed children, timeless as biblical wanderers. Major Robert Sinclair, 35, Connecticut steel forged in battle's crucible, arrived on horseback, uniform dust-streaked, eyes unflinching yet harboring war's weariness. The plantation's veranda creaked under his boots, air thick with honeysuckle and latent thunder. Confronting the children in the drawing room, where sunlight dappled their unchanged faces, shook his core, a soldier accustomed to carnage, now facing the uncanny. Confederate ruse, he accused Polk, voice clipped. Hoax for morale sabotage. Witness the proof, Polk retorted, ledger and letters proffered like sacred texts. Sinclair descended into the chamber, fingers tracing carved inscriptions, inhaling the earthy chill. He perused Harper's missives, interviewed Mary Catherine, her composure unnerving, responses laced with scriptural depth. Reluctance yielded to acceptance, government imperative. Beyond war, science reshaping fate. Battlefield stasis for the wounded? Thomas interjected, fire in his veins, not weapons, Major. Souls tormented. Martha echoed, 7 perished for 31, multiply the toll? Sinclair's silence spoke volumes, orders issued, relocation to Memphis military haven. Protests raged, Thomas and Martha's voices rising like prophets decrying exile, but law bowed to martial grip. September 3 dawned gray, wagons rumbling like chariots of doom. Children boarded quietly, bags meager as beggars' alms, faces masks of resignation. Mary Catherine paused, turning to Thomas, gratitude for the breach, the world unripe, you shattered chains. Throat constricted, forgive my bloodline sin, I failed your safeguard. Effort suffices, more than shepherd's deceit. Wagons receded, dust veiling like a shroud, Martha's hand in his a fragile anchor amid spiritual tempest. Memphis facility, a repurposed hospital echoing with soldiers' groans, isolated the children in a wing barred like Eden's Gate. Dr. Jonathan Myers, 42, Harvard's prodigy, approached with skepticisms. Scalpel. Initial disdain morphed to fixation, vitals anomalous, blood viscous as sacramental wine, bones denser than youth's fragility, cells in eternal rejuvenation, defying entropy's law. Perpetual renewal, he reported, quill-scratching parchment. Aging's inefficiency abolished, not God's, but time's exiles. Washington's queries surged, replication? Warfare's boon? Myers' probes escalated, samples drawn, wounds inflicted for study, extremes tested. Children complied, stoic as martyrs, save Mary Catherine's rebuke, shepherd's air, cruelty cloaked in inquiry. Myers faltered, understanding demands cost. As he claimed, 7 necessary ends. Her plea, humanity, not specimens. Silence his retort. That eve, under gaslight's flicker, Mary Catherine convened the 31 beds in regimented rows, air heavy with antiseptic and quiet resolve. Extraction endless, bodies pushed to fracture. William, powerless youths. Altered strengths, she countered. Resilient, linked, chamber's web binds us. Escape plotted, moonless October 23, clouds veiling stars like divine complicity. Guards lax, focused outward, children slipped shadows, splintering into trios, vanishing into Memphis labyrinth, then beyond, north to Illinois' prairies, west to Arkansas's wilds, south to Mississippi's deltas. Names shed like skins, blending into war's displaced hordes. Dawn's alarm, Myers' fury, searches fruitless amid chaos. Sinclair's report, perished, likely. Private missive, unnatural survivors, comforting or dread? Thomas perished 1871, archives sealed till 1921, ledger, letters donated for posterity's judgment. Martha endured till 1883, questing orphanages for traces, finding voids. Frost to 1879, journals baffling modernity. Polk to 1883, records sanitized. Plantation blazed 1891, chamber rediscovered as legend. Yet whispers persisted, ageless wanderers in 1800s to 1900s lore, gray-eyed Mary Catherine, timeless 7, William, Frontier nomad, Sarah, recurring orphan. Folklore or fact? 1921 unsealing sparked frenzy, then faded. Trails chilled, Harper vanished, formula lost. Fragments linger, photos hinting unchanged faces across eras, stories of healers defying death. Shepherds bid for purity's haven birthed eternal exiles, seeds in unhealed soil. Still out there? Witnesses to endless sin, bodies timeless as divine promise unfulfilled, success and failure entwined, mystery eternal.